Imagine a massive fog of smoke filled with poisonous gases barreling towards your hometown. Millions of Canadians and Americans faced this startling reality in June of 2023, having to once again strap on their N95 masks out of fear of suffocation.
It's very scary and dangerous too.
As wildfires in Canada billowed out of control, unleashing toxic air and blanketing major US cities, record-breaking air quality warnings, evacuations, and flight delays gave a glimpse into the devastating long-term impacts of climate change. But why did this happen? Which areas were affected most? What lessons did we learn? And is yet another event like this on the horizon? In March 2023, a record-breaking series of wildfires unleashed their fury across Canada's provinces, peaking at intensity around June. 11 provinces and territories had been affected, with numerous fires in Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Quebec being amongst the worst. As of June 5, 2023, Canada had been subjected to over 2,000 wildfires, which burned 43,000 square kilometers, the equivalent of over 10.5 million acres. On June 6, 2023, 433 new active wildfires emerged, out of which 249 were considered out of control. The smoke generated by these wildfires resulted in record-breaking air quality alerts and evacuations across Canada, the United States, and Europe, without question making this the most destructive wildfire season in Canadian history. Wildfires are typically accidental blazes that burn in forests, grasslands, or prairies. They can be caused by human activity or natural phenomenon such as lightning and can occur at any time or place. However, in half of all reported cases, their origins remain unknown. Canada is no doubt facing a growing wildfire risk due to climate change. Warmer and drier weather has made vegetation more flammable, while strong winds quickly spread even the smallest of fires. Meanwhile, poor forest management has exacerbated the issue. Half of all wildfires in Canada are caused by lightning strikes, which are becoming more frequent due to climate change. The other half are caused by campfires, careless human activity, prescribed fires that have grown out of control, or train sparks. With Canada's recent onslaught of wildfires, viral videos have circulated online showing helicopters dropping massive balls of fire over its forests. However, many believe these occurrences are part of Canada's prescribed fire plan. This has angered many Canadians, who believe these events are instead part of a larger political agenda. However, it's important to not jump to conclusions without concrete facts and data. What do you think is happening here? Regardless, the impacts of these fires have been astronomical, with decades of environmental pollution taking a massive toll on human health. This year especially has seen record-breaking fires comparable to the 2016 Fort McMurray wildfire and the 2021 Lytton fire. In order to respond effectively to this threat, it's essential that Canadians are better informed on fire prevention strategies and clearly understand the broad scope of these issues. As wildfire smoke from this event engulfs US cities, including those in Washington, D.C. and North Virginia, citizens living in these areas were advised to stay inside with windows and doors closed to help reduce exposure to the deadly gases. This is especially true for the elderly, who are more at risk, and children who have smaller lungs and breathe in a larger proportion of air relative to their body size. As unprecedented levels of air pollution threaten public health in major cities, air quality indices have skyrocketed to over 300, even to 400 at times, which could have a detrimental impact on your lungs, even at limited levels of exposure. The hazardous gases and rapidly fluctuated AQIs signal intense danger and raise alarm for inhabitants of these cities. Due to the hazardous air quality caused by the Canadian wildfires, New York state officials provided over 1 million N95 masks to its citizens. It's critical that Americans experiencing dangerous air pollution, especially those with health conditions, listen to local authorities to protect themselves and their families, President Joe Biden said on Twitter. Travelers across the East Coast and Midwest were severely impacted by the deadly smoke billowing south from the Canadian wildfires, with over 2,400 flights delayed in the US. United Airlines, followed by American Airlines and Southwest Airlines, acknowledged the danger by issuing travel advisories and allowing passengers to rebook tickets without the usual fare difference. Passengers have experienced significant disruptions to their plans, and the long-term effects of the smoke remain uncertain. The fires have so far spread their devastating reach to a record-breaking 4.7 million hectares, which is 11.6 million acres, an area greater than all but 3 fire seasons since 1983 combined. The horror is only just beginning, as the fire season has barely drawn its curtains. As the flames of Canada's devastating wildfire season rage on, over 20,000 people have been forced to abandon their homes in search of safety. While some have been able to return, many others remain dispersed within and away from their communities. With the northeastern United States recently enveloped by an oppressive, pungent, smoke-filled haze, it's important to discuss the health risk of wildfire smoke. The toxic mix of gases contained in wildfire smoke particles carries an abundance of detrimental health risks if inhaled. During the recent inundation of wildfire smoke, New York City and surrounding areas briefly eclipsed air quality levels amongst the worst in recorded history of our planet. Thus, the associated health risk should not be ignored. Wildfire smoke is a toxic mix of air particles that can linger in the atmosphere for weeks, traveling across hundreds, even thousands of miles. Not only are the flames and smoke often destructive to vegetation and trees, but they can wreak havoc on vehicles and buildings, leaving traces of chemicals, metal, plastic, and synthetic materials in its path. Prolonged exposure to wildfire smoke is linked to increased risk of pregnancy loss, heart and respiratory illnesses, as well as long-term changes to bodily functions related to the brain and lungs. A UC Davis study found that the same volume of wildfire smoke causes more inflammation and tissue damage than the same volume of air pollution caused by other means. The 2018 Camp Fire in California associated exposure with changes in cognition and brain activity up to a year later. Fungal infections have also increased in the months after smoke exposure, associated with the transfer of spores through the smoke. It is clear that we must take rigorous safety precautions to minimize the health effects of wildfire smoke. With the Earth's climate rapidly changing, more frequent wildfires and thus more exposure to wildfire smoke is expected. Unfortunately, the long-term health effects of smoke exposure over multiple seasons have yet to be uncovered. Current research is looking into potential impacts, such as the long-term effects of smoke particles in water supplies, residue on crops and livestock, the effects of smoke exposure on the uterus of pregnant women, and whether or not wildfire smoke amplifies the adverse impacts of extreme summer heat. Additionally, it is suggested that nutrients carried in wildfire smoke may contribute to downwind algae blooms, a finding which could have far-reaching implications for drinking water and lake ecosystems. The blazes in Canada this wildfire season are legendary in their magnitude and scope. Unfortunately, the inferno raging through the province's no longer dense forests has far-reaching implications and distinctions when compared to previously destructive wildfire seasons. The 2023 season started earlier than normal and has been more extensive and more intense than ever before, with multiple fires burning in every corner of the country simultaneously. With a firefighting system divided into 10 provinces and 3 territories, it begs the question, is Canada adequately prepared to face this crisis? Resources have been overwhelmed, with the US Armed Forces joining the effort to provide logistical and transportation support, though they are not allowed to actually fight fires. Seeing as natural resources are owned by Canada's individual provinces, Canada doesn't have a hefty federal force to tackle the blaze, making matters even worse. Provincial cuts to firefighting services have also put a strain on the efforts, leading others to suggest that retired firefighters should be called upon. Jen Beverly, a former firefighter in Ontario, who now studies wildfires at the University of Alberta, said that taking advantage of the experience of retired firefighters would make more sense than forming a brand new strike force. Not only would it be incredibly beneficial to have those with local, or at least familiar knowledge on the scene, but many retired firefighters are still physically fit enough for the dangerous job. More than 1,100 firefighters from around the world have been dispatched across Canada to help put out the country's raging fires. coming from places as near as the United States and as far away as the opposite hemisphere, from France, Chile, Costa Rica, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Help has arrived with reinforcements. This international response has been unprecedented, and Canada is undoubtedly grateful, as its firefighting capacity has been stretched thin. Most of the firefighters are under bilateral agreements with Canada to share resources, and there are currently 352 personnel from Australia, 295 from the US, 200 from South Africa, 46 from New Zealand, 40 from France, and 1 each from Chile and Costa Rica. South Africans in particular come through the Public Works program Working on Fire, which provides job training for young individuals. These individuals will be stationed in Canada for about a month and are expected to offer significant, impactful assistance. Canada's prevention measures for fighting forest fires have weakened due to budget cuts, a lack of personnel from Canada's Forest Service, and convoluted regulations, which have made some of the nation's forests particularly vulnerable. In an age where it's pertinent to ask if Canada has enough firefighting capacity, experts suggest placing a stronger emphasis on pre-fire prevention measures. Mike Flanagan, who researches wildfires at British Columbia's Thompson Rivers University, emphasizes the need to start forming a plan before the problem is out of control. We need to do all that we can to stay ahead of the problem, he says. However, current policy rests in the belief that the solution is suppression-based. British Columbia, for example, spent 801 million Canadian dollars, about 601 million US dollars, on extinguishing last year's mega fires, but only allocated $32 million to prevention. Several provinces gravitate to safeguard towns and villages, but need to address woods-wide risks more often. There is potential for the federal government to provide funds, which is necessary for enlarging projects beyond just confined communities. For a successful outcome, there needs to be sufficient financing for provinces to grow measures from minute localized plans to large-scale perspectives, Flanagan says. Canada is undeniably facing its worst wildfire in history, caused either by human activities or natural phenomenon, with 11 provinces and territories affected by the increasingly severe wildfires. The smoke generated by the fires has resulted in poor air quality, travel disruptions, and the displacement of thousands of people. With widespread health risks and long-term effects still in question, experts believe Canada should focus more on pre-fire prevention. With more powerful fire prevention systems in place and sufficient financing for individual provinces, Canada could reduce the devastating impacts of wildfires for years to come. So, we turn to you. Do you live in a Canadian or US city affected by these wildfires? Do you believe Canadian helicopters are carelessly setting their own forests ablaze to further a specific political agenda? Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Ready to continue your journey with us and witness more jaw-dropping global disasters? Click the videos on screen and we'll see you there.